Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Kristen, this is my booktube, and in today's video we are going to be going over my March TBR. We've got a pretty good size TBR for the month of March. This morning I went through my actual saved TBR on my Libby app so that I could make sure that they are books that I can borrow from my library, and I have compiled a list of 7 books that I would love to get to in March. Most of the books on this list are books that I have wanted to read for at least like a year or so, with one notable exception that we will get to very shortly. But yeah, let's just go ahead and dive on in to talking about the 7 books that I would love to read in March. So I'll go ahead and start off with the one book that I do own physically. So this is not one of the ones that was on my Libby TBR, but nonetheless, I have been itching to read this since the day I brought it home, which you would have seen if you watched last week's video, and that is Agatha Christie, An Elusive Woman. I will be totally honest and tell you that immediately after I finished filming my Valentine's vlog, I read the preface of this book. I didn't actually start chapter 1, but I did already read the preface because I have no chill when it comes to Lucy Worsley or Agatha Christie. So clearly, this is a book I'm very excited about. This book has been sitting on my nightstand for the past couple nights, and I have not started actually reading it yet because I've been working on some crochet projects before going to bed. But starting in March, I really want to start chipping away at this book, whether that be reading in bed before going to sleep or having some more slow start mornings on the weekends where I can read a chapter or 2 of this while sitting in bed. Whatever it may be, I'm ready to start this book and get into the meat of it. Especially after reading the preface, it made me even more excited to read this book. In the preface, Lucy claims that after evaluating all of the evidence and statements that Agatha Christie has made, that she has put together a pretty definitive timeline of what happened when she disappeared in 1929, I think. I don't remember the year. It was like in the 20s, I'm pretty sure. But she disappeared for like 11 days. And it's always been something that has fascinated me. So Lucy's saying that she has combed the archives and has put together a narrative of what happened on those days got me real excited. So all that to say, very excited to dig into this book. If this TBR list wasn't already so long, I would also include the Edgar Allan Poe one, but I don't want to overwhelm myself with too many physical books, so we'll stick with this one for my physical book pick for the month of March. Now, the rest of the books that I'm going to be mentioning are, like I said, ones that I found on Libby through my local library, and they are all audiobooks that, at least right now, don't have hold times, or the hold times are quite short. Couple days, a week, something like that. None of these have like months long holds on them, obviously, because then it wouldn't make sense for them to be on my March TBR. But the first one on my list is Listen for the Lie. So Listen for the Lie is one that I do in fact physically own. However, I think that listening to the audiobook is going to be a lot more feasible for me, but who knows, I may bounce back and forth if I'm feeling like it, but more than likely, this will be an audiobook read for me. So I have the synopsis pulled up on Goodreads. I feel like I don't do a great job of explaining what the books are about when I just try to wing it. So I'm gonna read you the synopsis on Goodreads. So the description for this book is, what if you thought you murdered your best friend? And if everyone else thought it too? And what if the truth doesn't matter? Lucy and Savi were the golden girls of their small Texas town. Pretty, smart, and enviable. Lucy married a dream guy with a big ring and an even bigger new home. Savi was the social butterfly, loved by all, and, if you believe the rumors, especially popular with the men in town. But after Lucy is found wandering the streets covered in her best friend Savi's blood, everyone thinks she is the murderer. It's been years since that horrible night, a night Lucy can't remember anything about, and she has since moved to LA and started a new life. But now the phenomenally huge hit true crime podcast Listen for the Lie and its too good-looking host, Ben Owens, have decided to investigate Savi's murder for the show's 2nd season. Lucy is forced to return to the place she vowed never to set foot in again to solve her friend's murder, even if she is the one who did it. The truth is out there, if we just listen. So obviously, this book seems very up my alley. It is a thriller, and I don't even know how long it's been sitting on my shelf, if I'm being totally honest. So when I saw that the audiobook was immediately available through my local library, I decided that I just need to go ahead and listen to it rather than waiting for a time when I am able to read it physically. And even on Libby, there's like a little blurb. I don't even know if you can call it a blurb. It's one sentence from Stephen King, and it just says a world-class whodunit. So yeah, we'll see how I feel about it when I get around to reading it. The next book on my TBR is one that I definitely don't own because I have eyed it in bookstores several times, but I've never actually purchased it. And that is All the Light We Cannot See. So the description for this one is Marie-Laure lives in Paris near the Museum of Natural History where her father works. When she is 12, the Nazis occupy Paris and father and daughter flee to the walled citadel of St. Malo, where Marie-Laure's reclusive great-uncle lives in a tall house by the sea. With them, they carry what might be the museum's most valuable and dangerous jewel. In a mining town in Germany, Werner Fing, an orphan, grows up with his younger sister, enchanted by a crude radio they find that brings them news and stories from places they have never seen or imagined. Werner becomes an expert at building and fixing these crucial new instruments and is enlisted to use his talent to track down the resistance. Deftly intertwining the lives of Marie-Laure and Werner, the author illuminates the ways against all odds people try to be good to one another. From the highly acclaimed, multiple award-winning Anthony Doerr, the stunningly beautiful instant New York Times bestseller about a blind French girl and a German boy whose paths collide in occupied France as both try to survive the devastation of World War II. So yeah, this is a book obviously centered around World War II, set in France during the Nazi occupation. Seems like a historical fiction, kind of reminds me of The Nightingale, mostly because that one is also set in France during World War II, and I think the colors on the cover are fairly similar. Aside from that, I don't know how similar the plots are going to be, really, at all. The Nightingale is about two sisters, and this is about two children, so I would be surprised if there is really that much similarity, but nonetheless, it did remind me of The Nightingale, so maybe that's why it's kind of stuck in my mind, because I absolutely loved The Nightingale. Not gonna lie, it made me sob like a little baby at the end. Beautiful book though, absolutely gorgeous. Since this one kind of reminded me of that other book, I decided to go ahead and put it on my TBR, and it's also one that I have thought about buying for a very long time, so if I can borrow it from my library, I can finally figure out if I should actually spend money to own it or not. Because the one thing I hate is spending money on a book and then absolutely disliking it. So at least now I can know for sure. The next book on my list is The Last One at the Wedding. And I have read another book by this author before. It was a book called Hidden Pictures, which was a thriller about a child who drew very scary drawings, and it was quite creepy. The physical book did have depictions of these creepy kid drawings in it, and nothing freaks me out quite like a creepy child, honestly. So that one definitely did give me those like creeped out, chill down my spine kind of vibes that I do enjoy in a thriller. So I thought I would go ahead and give this one a go as well. I will say that out of all of the ones that I've mentioned so far, with the exception of this one, because I haven't looked up the ratings for this one on Goodreads, but every other audiobook that I'm mentioning is rated a lot higher than this one is. I believe this one is like a 3.68 on Goodreads, so we'll see how I feel about it. I'm not necessarily going in with super high hopes, but I did really enjoy Hidden Pictures, so I'm gonna try to give it a fair chance. And the description for this book is, from the best-selling author of Hidden Pictures comes a breathtaking work of suspense about a father trying to save his daughter from a life-altering decision that will put everything he loves on the line. Frank Satowski is shocked when his daughter Maggie calls him for the first time in 3 years. He was convinced that her estrangement would become permanent. He's even more surprised when she invites him to her upcoming wedding in New Hampshire. Frank is ecstatic and determined to finally make things right. He arrives to find that the wedding is at a private estate, very secluded, very luxurious, very much out of his league. It seems that Maggie failed to mention that she's marrying Aidan Gardner, the son of a famous tech billionaire. Feeling desperately out of place, Frank focuses on reconnecting with Maggie and getting to know her new family. But it's difficult. Aidan is withdrawn and evasive. Maggie doesn't seem to have time for him, and he finds that locals are disturbingly hostile to the Gardners. Frank needs to know more about this family his daughter is marrying into, but if he pushes too hard, he could lose Maggie forever. An edge-of-your-seat thriller that delves deep into the heart of one family, the last one at the wedding, is a work of brilliant suspense from a true modern master. So that, I feel like that sets it up pretty highly in the description, but that coupled with the reviews makes me think that I just need to keep my mind open while reading this. Maybe people read that description, got to the end, and were like, oh yeah, this sounds so good, and then we're just kind of let down by the actual book. So I'm gonna try to keep my expectations kind of low going in, just so I'm not expecting too much out of the book. I feel like I'm often guilty of expecting more out of authors than what they give in the book. So I'm gonna try to give the author a little grace here, especially since I have read their other book before and I do remember enjoying it. Next up on my list is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. And I believe I've read 2 other Lucy Foley books before. I've read The Hunting Party and The Guest List. And I did enjoy both of those. I read The Guest List first, and I do think I liked that one more. However, the plots of both of them are very, very similar. And I did notice that as soon as I started The Hunting Party. It seemed like she started with The Hunting Party, and then The Guest List just was like another go at that kind of isolated murder situation. So we'll see how I feel about this one. But this is one that is once again on my bookshelf in my room. It's been sitting there for God knows how long. It's been on my TBR since it came out. And basically I'm tired of seeing the cover everywhere and being like, oh yeah, I need to read that. So we're really trying to get it off of my TBR at this point. So the description on Goodreads says, from the New York Times bestselling author of The Guest List comes a new locked room mystery set in a Paris apartment building in which every resident has something to hide. Jess needs a fresh start. She's broken alone, and she's just left her job under less than ideal circumstances. Her half-brother Ben didn't sound thrilled when she asked if she could crash with him for a bit, but he didn't say no, and surely everything will look better from Paris. Only when she shows up to a very nice apartment, could Ben really have afforded this? He's not there. The longer Ben stays missing, the more Jess starts to dig into her brother's situation, and the more questions she has. Ben's neighbors are an eclectic bunch, and not particularly friendly. Jess may have come to Paris to escape her past, but it's starting to look like it's Ben's future that's in question. The socialite, the nice guy, the alcoholic, the girl on the verge, the concierge, everyone's a neighbor, everyone's a suspect, and everyone knows something they're not telling. So from the description, it sounds pretty interesting. Does still sound like it could be very similar to The Hunting Party and The Guest List, but once again, I'm gonna try to keep my mind open. I will say that I have heard from other people that have read this book that it was a little underwhelming. So once again, gonna try to keep my expectations a little bit lower so I'm not completely disappointed. Mainly so I don't fall into a reading slump again. If that does happen with some of these books, I have a feeling this one will be able to pull me out of it. All right, now we're changing gears just a little bit because the next book on my list is actually a fantasy book, and it is Powerless. So this is a book I've seen a lot recently. I have heard people talk about it in my personal life, online. I've seen the cover a lot of places. I've toyed with buying this book, but I haven't actually purchased it or read it yet. So when I was scrolling through my TBR, I decided that, you know what, it's about time that I actually give this book a try. The description on Goodreads for it says, she is the very thing she spent her whole life hunting. He's the very thing she spent her whole life pretending to be. Only the extraordinary belong in the kingdom of Ilia. The exceptional, the empowered, the elites. The powers these elites have possessed for decades were graciously gifted to them by the plague, though not all were fortunate enough to both survive the sickness and reap the reward. Those born ordinary are just that, ordinary. And when the king decreed that all ordinaries be banished in order to preserve his elite society, lacking in ability suddenly became a crime, making Peyton Gray a felon by fate and a thief by necessity. Surviving in the slums as an ordinary is no simple task. Peyton knows this better than most. Having been trained by her father to be overly observant since she was a child, Peyton poses as a psychic in the crowded city, blending in with the elites as best she can in order to stay alive and out of trouble. Easier said than done. When Peyton unsuspectingly saves one of Ilia's princes, she finds herself thrown into the purging trials. The brutal competition exists to showcase the elite's powers, the very thing Peyton lacks. If the trials and the opponents within them don't kill her, the prince she's fighting feelings for certainly will if he discovers what she is: completely ordinary. So this is one that seems pretty highly rated. I know people who have spoken very highly of this book. So this is one that is once again been on my radar for a while. And when I was going through my TBR and noticing how thriller heavy it was, I decided to throw this one in there just for a little bit of variety. Alrighty, and the last book on my March TBR is The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. So I don't know how much I've talked about it on here, but I am a big fan of British comedians, and specifically British panel shows. I love a panel show. I love just watching comedians riff with one another over silly things, and Richard Osman is one of those comedians. So this book has been on my TBR since he first released it, years ago at this point. This series now has, like, I think 4, maybe 5 books in the series total. So I'm really behind. This is another one that I do own physically, but I have not sat down and actually read it. So when I saw that it was ready and available to borrow at my library, I decided that now is the time for me to finally read this book. And the description on Goodreads for this one says, in a peaceful retirement village, 4 unlikely friends meet up once a week to investigate unsolved murders. But when a brutal killing takes place on their very doorstep, the Thursday Murder Club finds themselves in the middle of their very first live case. Elizabeth, Joyce, Ibrahim, and Ron might be pushing 80, but they still have a few tricks up their sleeves. Can our unorthodox but brilliant gang catch the killer before it's too late? And the description of this one is really giving Agatha Christie, Poirot, Miss Marple kind of vibes to me. You know, it's a group of older people in a retirement village who are pretty unassuming, and yet here they are solving a crime. So between it being authored by a comedian that I do enjoy watching, it having similar vibes to some Agatha Christie stories, and it just, you know, being a murder mystery, all of those things make it perfect for my TBR. So yeah, that is pretty much it for my March TBR. There's quite a few books on this list, and it seems like a pretty lofty goal considering how I haven't been reading that much in the month of February, but hopefully we can change that in this last week. I've just had a lot on my mind recently, and I've found that even when I do sit down to read, a lot of times my mind is just wandering to other things. So I'm hoping that I can get at least a little bit of reading done this week, and then we can dive into March and head full force into these books that have been haunting my TBR for far too long, and come out of it with some good books to recommend you guys. So yeah, that is pretty much it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below. Let me know. You should also subscribe while you're down there because I put out new videos pretty much every single week. I have had a lot of fun ideas for things that I want to do with this channel. Things like doing Cliff Notes versions of some of the classic books that I really enjoy or that I just have a lot of opinions on. Doing more history related things that also tie in with some of the books that I own. I have a lot of ideas rolling around in my little noggin right now that I would like to film at some point. So if you are into history or bookish content, go ahead and make sure that you subscribe so that you will know when I actually get around to making those things. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!